Financial Channel. Folks, there's nothing else like it on YouTube. You're going to find a wealth of information here that'll be reinforced the more videos you watch on this channel. You're going to gain a unique perspective on financial concepts like sequence of returns risk, whatever that is, compound growth. You're going to see incredible numbers when you see the charts. You're going to learn about asset allocation, the impact of inflation, the 4% rule, and on and on. On this channel, folks, we use actual historical numbers in dozens of different spreadsheets. We run numbers for people just to have these above concepts reinforced again and again. You're going to gain a wealth of knowledge when you see the actual numbers. So I got this request. Let me read it to you. Hello, great videos. Could you see where $1 million might be in 10 years based on all the spreadsheets showing all the decades? I'm curious about what my best and worst case scenarios might look 10 years from now, beginning with a $1 million today. Now, he didn't specify uh, anything more than just $1 million. He didn't specify whether he's in the withdrawal stage, whether he's going to add any more. So we're going to actually look at his numbers for $1 million. What I'm going to do is look at it from years 5 through 10. Now, he's asking for 10 years, but I want to show you this is very important because, again, what we do on this channel, back up here a second, we use the returns for the S&P 500 for the last 100 years. In the last 100 years, we've had 75 up years and 26 down years. We don't know what the next 10 years are going to hold. Again, just going by these numbers right here, what if you hit a bad decade, say, for example, 2000 to 2008 here, that you would have ended up basically with less numbers than what you even started with. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I developed this spreadsheet to show you by each decade where you would be. You had a down decade like the 1930s, and I just taking $100, just showing that we could make it a million, but whatever. $100 where you would be if you had returns like the 1930s. Now, the average return, if you take the average of these, it come out to 5.34. So if you were getting 5.34 on $100, you'd get $168 after 10 years. Unfortunately, you can't go by average returns because you need to go by what you actually get, and you actually would have ended up in these two different decades are highlighted in yellow with less money than what you started with. That $100 would only be worth 99.48, $99.48. The decade of the 2000 would have been even worse. The average is 1.21, but you actually ended up with almost a negative 1% return. You ended up with $90.88. Now, if that's not making sense to you, let's look at the actual numbers on this $1 million. That is what he asked me about. Okay, we're going to take $1 million. We're not going to add any dime. We're not taking anything money out. Doesn't matter whether you're in accumulation or withdrawal stage. Where is that $1 million going to be if you're not adding to it or withdrawing from it in 10 years? Well, I did it from 5 to 10 years. Here's the $1 million you put in this black row right here. Folks, if you look at just a 5-year period, depending on which 5 years you're talking about, you could have there was 4 down years straight from 1929 to 1933. There was 3 down years in these 5-year periods. So the bottom line is, in the worst case scenario for a 5-year period, you could end up with only $527,000. These are the returns. These are 1925 returns. You can see after 5 years, you would have this right here to $2,598,000. Now I click on a different year. These are the returns. Well, let's go actually start in 1928. 1928, you had 1 good year and then 4 down years. So that 5-year period, you ended up with that $527,000. Again, nobody knows the future. So for me to run it for just the next 5 to 10 years, I always hesitate to run numbers for people because you could have a down decade, you could have a good decade, you could have a really good decade or a really bad decade. In fact, over the 10-year period, let's look at the 10-year, which is what he asked me about. There's actually a time where you'd only have $869,000 after 10 years. You put $1 million in it, and you only have $869,880 to show for it. I actually broke it down here for the 10. Let's break this down for the 10-year period because that's what he was asking for. We could do any of these time frames. So 100% of the time you'd have 5 million, but again, you started at 10 million. I mean, 1 million. 100% of the time. Let me change these just a second. There we go. Sorry, I should have done this ahead of time. Okay, for a 10-year period, which is what he's asking for, $1 million, not adding anymore or withdrawing anymore, where would that be given the returns for the last 100 years? So we're looking at the worst 10-year period, we'll look at the best, and then we'll look at the median for the 10-year period. That's what this spreadsheet does. Again, that's what we do on this channel. Here's the actual breakdown for the 10-year period. You can see the blues going down there. First of all, 96% of the time you'd have that $1 million back, what you started with, but there's actually 4% of the time you wouldn't even have that money back. They're highlighted in white here. If they aren't colored at all, you didn't even get your money back after 10 years. I can go down through here and show you these numbers. There's 2 there, and there's, if we can find them here. There are 2 more there in 1999 and 2000. Those numbers ring a bell, 1999 and 2000. If you started in 1999, you have 1 good year, 3 down years, and 1 good year. You ended up with less than what you actually started with. Let's look at the actual breakdown. 96% of the time, you at least have your money back. 87% color-coded in blue, you'd actually have 1.5 million. And see the blues going down through here. But what's really going to shock you is 71% of the time, color-coded in gold, you'd actually have double your money in that 10-year period. You can see all the golds going down through there? It was a really good stretch in there in the 40s, 50s, early 60s. Right here. So that's why I want to answer this question is, man, I really hesitate to run it for any shorter period than like 25 or 30 years because you could hit a bad decade. They call that sequence of returns risk. If you're starting to withdraw money during these down periods, that can really be problematic. But we're not even withdrawing here or adding. We're just showing you this $1 million after 5 years, you don't have 527,000. If it was the worst case scenario, you can see some of these other numbers going down through. In fact, let me change this to 5 and we'll see the actual breakdown for you. 88% of the time, you'd have your $1 million back. They're color coded in green. 67% of the time, you'd have 1.5 million color coded in blue. But I want to key on this 12% of the time, you wouldn't even have your money back. That's color coded in this light gray here. You can see them going down through them. Most of them are in depression years, but let's go down here and see if we can find some other ones. Because 88% of the time, you'd be just fine. You can see golds are over 2 million. This is after 5 years. There's 1970. You'd be running. Wouldn't even have your money back from the $1 million. 1973, and now you see 98, 99, and 2000. Because again, that was a bad decade. So if I run numbers for this a short period of time, which is all he wanted to know, he wanted to know by the decades where you would be, and that's what it shows you right here. The bad decades, the 1930s. Some people say don't even run those numbers, but I like to include the depression years in case you really have a stock market crash. But even in this case, this decade was actually worse than this decade. If you look at the actual numbers, $100, you have $90 to show for it. $100 over here, you have $99.48, $99.48. But again, folks, that's what we do in this channel. We love running numbers for people. We love to point out some of these things that you really need to know. You really need to be in it for the longer term. Do your planning for the longer term. Now, if you're in the withdrawal stage, we look at the 4% rule, but that's in other videos. I'll link to those. But that's what we love to do on this channel. We love to just point out different observations you can have. In this case, you can see in a 5 to 10 year period, that $1 million, you could end up with less than that. In fact, we've looked in other videos, it's sometimes as much as 14 years in, you wouldn't even get back what you put in. That's for another video also. Please check out different videos. I've got dozens of them out there just to educate you on all these different principles. It's really a wealth of information out there just looking at these spreadsheets. Thanks so much for watching.